In my doctrinal framework, the Greek word, hamartian, is not about actions, not about behavior, not about the little moral slip-ups the church obsesses over. No. It names something far deeper, far older, far more fatal. It names damnation unbelief, the condition of spiritual death itself. It is the state every human being enters the moment we take our first breath, because every one of us born with a human father inherits the same thing Adam stepped into the moment he stopped believing God. That is the sin the old covenant could not forgive. That is the sin no sacrifice could reach. And Hebrews tells you this if you slow down long enough to hear it. Hebrews 10:2 says that if the sacrifices had actually worked, if they had actually removed the problem, then the worshippers would have had no more conscience of G266 sins, no more awareness of damnation unbelief. But that never happened. Instead, every single year, the sacrifices dragged that same sin back into the light again. Every year was a reminder, the core problem is still here. You are still spiritually dead. You are still in the condition Adam created when he chose to stop believing the God who cannot lie. And this is where the church has misled people for centuries. They say Jesus died to forgive all your actions, all your mistakes, all your moral failures. But that is not what the text is dealing with. Jesus Christ did not die to clean up your behavior. Jesus Christ spiritually died for one sin, the sin that opened the door to death in the first place. Adam's disobedience. Adam's unbelief. Adam's choice to stop believing God. That one act created a condition that every human inherits, and that one condition is what Jesus confronted. That is the sin that required a new covenant. That is the sin that demanded better promises. And Hebrews 8:6 says exactly that. Christ obtained a more excellent ministry because he is the mediator of a better covenant, established on better promises. Better than what? Better than a system that could never touch the one sin that mattered. Better than a covenant that could only remind you of your spiritual death but could never remove it. Better because this covenant finally deals with the one sin that kept every human being from being a child of God. But here is the part almost no one remembers. Jesus and the apostles didn't quote from the Masoretic text. They quoted from the Septuagint, the 70, the scriptures in common use in their day. And in the 70, the verse we call Jeremiah 31:34 is found in Jeremiah 38:34. And when you read it there, you hear the promise that Hebrews is quoting word for word. The 70 says, "And they shall not at all teach every one his fellow citizen, and every one his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest of them, for I will be merciful to their iniquities, and their sins I will remember no more." That is the new covenant promise. That is the declaration that God himself will deal with the sin no sacrifice could remove. And Hebrews 8:12 lifts that line straight out of the 70 and drops it into the new covenant. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their G266, damnation unbelief, sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. The writer is not talking about your actions. He is talking about the inherited condition of spiritual death. He is talking about the one sin that defined humanity from Adam onward. He is talking about the sin that the old covenant could not forgive and the new covenant exists to remove. And here is the tragedy, because the church redefined sin centuries ago, because they collapsed everything into bad behavior, nobody knows what the better promise actually is. Nobody knows what the better covenant actually accomplishes. Nobody knows that Jesus' spiritual death was not about moral bookkeeping but about removing the one unforgivable sin every human commits simply by being born. Without Christ's sacrifice, that one sin, damnation unbelief, would remain the barrier that keeps us from being children of God. But with his sacrifice, that barrier is gone. The condition is removed. The spiritual death inherited from Adam is replaced with life. And the new covenant stands as the announcement that God remembers that sin no more.